What is economics? It's basically a sophisticated system that allows us to track consumer spending, consumption, wealth disparity, and ultimately determines if I'll be eating my needed 2,500 calories for the day or another cup of rice. It's basically a convoluted way of saying we're all poor. Economics is such a broad subject that it's hard to hyperfixate on a certain topic, so I'll probably focus on the most important ones. The first one being government spending. Now, is this a boring subject? Yes, but I don't care. Many probably ask, where do local governments get these large sums of money to spend? Well, there's this evil entity that sneaks into your job, takes roughly 2.5% of your income, and it's called taxes. Now, if you're a person like me who doesn't pay them, you're probably wondering, is this really an ethical practice of taking people's hard-earned money that will ultimately go into another scary bus stop? No. Well, now that I think about it, it's a necessary evil. Governments try, and I'm really being generous here when I say try, to spend taxpayer money on things that ultimately benefit citizens, like infrastructure, public education, Medicare, and overall security.
It's that nuclear weapon. It's a nuclear weapon. If I press this, it's the end of the world. Isn't that cool?
So how do these governments know what to allocate money to the most? Well, first off, they see if 1, are the roads damaged? Yeah, they are. 2, are public school teachers getting paid a livable wage? No, they're not. 3, do we have an opioid crisis at hand? We sure do. They then gather all together and say, guys, after reviewing all these problems, then we have to do something about this. We need to build another minor league soccer stadium with our funds. Some of the decisions on what the money is spent on can come from the citizens, but that relies on if people are willing to fill out a bubble sheet, mail it back, and write their first and last names. This is all at a local level, but when looking at a more federal level, what ultimately moves a nation's economy? Well, the most important way economies are moved is through consumer spending. Now let's say in a hypothetical, a person has $1,000. They have the option to either purchase food that'll last them a couple of weeks, or Walter White's underwear. And they choose the logical option to save their money. This can be an indicator of a recession, while on the other hand, if the consumer is more inclined to spend money without having to worry about saving money, then this is a good indicator that the economy is thriving. Now, once the Federal Reserve gets a hold of this information, they then look at interest rates and either choose to keep interest rates the same, prolonging the inevitable fall of the US economy, 2, lower interest rates and everyone lives in peace and harmony and there's no hate to ever exist, and cupcakes are mass distributed to the people, or 3, increase interest rates and the four horsemen rise. As you can see, the consumer spending is such a key indicator on whether the US economy will survive or not. And in the wise words of Papa Friedman, let these guys just buy more shit so we can all be rich. Now, any entry-level 200 economics class will teach you that the wealth of the United States is not determined merely by the size of its GDP, but by the labor force, the scale of its tech innovation, and the depth of its capital markets. And that would be wrong. The wealth of a nation is based on its ability to pump out the next Snoop Dogg cookbook. Just check for yourself. We also have to look at a key component of economies around the world, that being imports and exports. Now, it's no question that China is the largest exporter in the world, but that doesn't necessarily mean they have the largest economy. That's right, America stays on top of obesity rates. Imports and exports measure the state of a country's economy through being able to meet the demands of the market. Basically, every supply and demand graph you see your finance bro talk about. As of right now, the US has placed tariffs on imports on foreign goods, even though our country was doing relatively fine before then. So what was the reason why the US was imposing large tariffs on foreign imports? It's because they want to bring back manufacturers to the US. But doing so will pass the tariff price to the consumer, thus leading to the situation we're in right now. I also want to bring up a whole subset of an economy, one that's part of the US GDP, but we don't exactly know how much it contributes to it. It's called the underground economy. The underground economy basically measures certain transactions that go unreported to the government because either the activity is illegal or because people like me want to avoid taxation. This can be unpaid labor, illegal sales of specific drugs, and primarily the exchange of lost My Little Pony media. Although it constitutes roughly 10% of our total GDP in the US, the IRS estimates over $500 billion per year is lost due to unreported or underreported income, making it the largest component of the tax gap. At this point, the IRS is less of a tax agency and more of an involuntary charity for cash-only hustlers. I find it really fun to think that roughly $500 billion is going to the sales of Wonka carts to high schoolers. As you can see, economics is a super broad subject that no one really understands. It's all really based off of calculated assumptions, and is really just one large subject explaining how we're all going to be poor in the future. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.